Hello, and welcome to the Smart Recovery Podcast, where we offer thoughtful conversation about a variety of recovery topics. You'll hear self-empowering and science-based approaches to making changes toward a healthier and more satisfying lifestyle and building a life beyond addiction. Our mission is for every podcast to provide you with the information and resources you need to guide your own successful recovery journey. If you or someone you know needs addiction-related help, we encourage you to visit smartrecovery.org, where you will find practical tools, connections to support group meetings, and links for additional resources. Remember that the purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care from a doctor or other qualified addiction professionals. Before making any changes in your treatment plan, please discuss your thoughts with your medical provider. Now sit back and enjoy today's Smart Recovery Podcast.
Welcome to the Smart Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Frazier. Today on the podcast, we're going to get strategic. We're going to talk about Smart Recovery's 2021-2022 strategic plan with Board President Bill Greer. Bill, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Luke. Great to be here.
You know, your biography is on the website, and other people have heard about you and your extensive career, I should say, in communications. But one thing I think the audience needs to know right away, Bill, is that you've actually come up through the smart ranks, so to speak.
Yes, indeed. I discovered SMART, I think, like quite a few people, recovering from an addiction myself. I think that goes back to about 2012. And I was dealing with an alcohol addiction, and I was in an intensive outpatient program, and they said, you really need to find a recovery support program to enhance your recovery, because this IOP treatment's not going to get it done. I mean, it's a good start, but if you really want to succeed, you got to find a recovery support program. And they said, pick one. And SMART was one of the choices. I was in Washington, D.C. at that time. There were a fair number of SMART meetings at that place and in that area. And I tried out some 12-step meetings. I went to SMART meetings, and I was lucky to have a SMART meeting very close to where I lived. And so I started attending those meetings. Within 6 months, with my recovery well underway, I decided to become a facilitator of meetings. I was encouraged by the existing facilitator. I went through the training. And I guess about 3 months after that, I became a co-facilitator of a meeting in DC, a regular meeting, and really learned a lot about how to run a meeting through that experience. And then I went on to start a family and friends meeting, because we didn't have very many in Washington, DC. In fact, it was the first family and friends meeting in that area. And about the same time, I was asked to become regional coordinator of the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, and did that for about 3 years. Also, I started an inside out meeting for a local correctional facility, a maximum security jail, in fact, for youth offenders. So I learned all about our inside out program. And then I was asked to join the board. 2017, that started. I had spent my entire career in the nonprofit sector, so I was able to bring that experience to my service on the board.
Right. Right. Well, that's so wonderful. I think that, and people in the audience are going to understand that it isn't just about coming to SMART at the board level, at the leadership position you're in right now, but the lived experience and how important that is for anyone who's in a position of some kind of leadership in an organization. So I'm really glad that you were able to go through that for us. It's important.
Yes, indeed.
So when we get into this strategic plan, you know, before any of the particulars and there's goals, and let me say from the outset for listeners, you can find the strategic plan. There's a link on the homepage of smartrecovery.org. It will talk about the new strategic plan. You can find it right there. Eventually, it'll be linked through the About Us menu. But for now, you can find it right on the homepage and link out to a PDF version, and it's quite an interesting read. But before we get into any of the particulars, Bill, What does a strategic plan really mean? And if you say it's a chance to be strategic, I'm going to cut you off right there.
No, not at all. When I look at the strategic plan, I first I look at SMART's mission, and our mission is to help people gain independence from addictive problems using our self-empowering, science-based 4-point program, and uh, and our strategic plan is all about helping as many people as possible use that program who could benefit from that program. And I also include in that, and we can never forget this, that our Smart Recovery helps family members and friends as well.
Right, right.
And no, let's not lose sight of that, because they're suffering as well. I know that also from my personal experience, because I grew up in a family with some addiction problems. So to the extent that our strategic plan is going to succeed, we have to enable ourselves to achieve that mission for as many people as possible. In fact, ideally, as we were putting this together, our overriding goal is to make Smart Recovery available to anyone, everyone who could benefit from the Smart Recovery program. And that's it. I mean, and everything we do in this plan must enhance our ability to do that.
Yeah. So if there's one unifying principle or one overarching foundational principle, it's getting the help out to those who need it.
And I would say secondarily, or the primary contributing factor to that, and I speak from very personal experience there, is it's awareness that it is our volunteers who are running our meetings, who are helping the people with their recovery. And so the success of our plan also depends a great deal on supporting our volunteers as much as we can in every way we can.
Yeah. So in a sense then, Bill, the strategic plan is in many ways geared toward volunteers, geared towards supporting the volunteers?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think that one of the great strengths of SMART has been a very passionate community of volunteers, some of whom go, above and beyond and facilitating numerous meetings, providing other volunteer service, but we can't grow, we can't succeed without a continuing growth of our volunteer community. We need meetings to be run by trained facilitators, and as those trained facilitators that make our meetings work well. And and I know as a regional coordinator, there was a constant demand for new meetings, and I had to keep on trying to recruit more facilitators to keep up with that demand, and that was a challenge. Because the demand for SMART had grown so significantly. I think, to give people some context, I don't know how aware everyone is, but SMART has grown incredibly in the last 10 years. I mean, it's just, when I started looking at these numbers, they were mind-boggling, actually. I mean, when you look at where SMART was in 2010, just in the U.S. alone, just 300 meetings, 300 weekly meetings. A pretty small organization just in the U.S., 600 worldwide, but 300 in the U.S. By the end of that decade, by 1919, we were up to more than 20,000, more than 2,000 meetings.
Oh boy.
That's growth by a factor of 7 in 10 years. I mean, I think any nonprofit would die.
I was going to say that. I mean, with that kind of growth, there's risk. There's risk involved with trying to keep up with the demand and trying to keep up with all the things that need to be done. So in a sense, the strategic plan is a necessity so that we can continue to grow.
Yes, and I think that's a big reason why we decided we needed a strategic plan. This wasn't like an arbitrary thing, well, it's been 5 years, we need a new strategic plan. It was like, we've grown so much, we need to to find out where we are and figure out how we need to restructure ourselves, how we need to strengthen ourselves, how we need to build more staff, more support systems to help our volunteers and to manage our growth. I mean, that's another
Right.
key thing. It's
That's right.
managing our growth effectively so that we can control this growth process and make it effective. And that requires a lot of change in the organization and looking, and we looked at ourselves in a very, I would very honest, open way. I think strategic planning requires
Hmm.
recognizing that you have to make changes. You have to address issues that maybe are a little uncomfortable to address, but if you don't address them, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't be fully in growth mode if you weren't trying to address the challenges as well as building on successes. But you're listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. Bill Greer, board president, is talking about the new strategic plan. You can find the link to it off our homepage at smartrecovery.org. And Bill, let's go right back to that point. There are areas of growth that are sometimes uncomfortable. What does the strategic plan say about those, or what does the strategic plan point to in terms of that kind of growth?
Well, I would say that one area that really was obvious to us, it has been for several years, is we need a lot more diversity. There are many ways to measure diversity, of course, but we need diversity in our leadership, and you can talk about diversity in terms of people of color, different sexual orientations, gender diversity, socioeconomic diversity, diversity in people's education levels, their communities where they come from. But I think that need was quite evident.
Yeah,
And
many dimensions, many dimensions.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think we have now formed a diversity committee already, headed up by Anna Troncoso, who's very passionate about this issue, and she's going to help lead us in that area. I would say another challenge that we have recognized and we need to address, which happens with any organization that grows very quickly, is quality control.
Hmm.
Um, we have to continue to find high quality volunteers and train them effectively. And I would say not just train them initially, but ongoing training has been identified as a very important part of our process that
Yeah.
we need to incorporate into SMART. I
Right.
mean, just the initial training it's a good start, but I think people who've been in SMART have to keep their skills
Yeah.
and their knowledge base current. Science is changing. I think that's something we need to do a better job of updating our program as
Mhm.
science finds new ways and better ways to treat
Yeah.
addiction.
You
Um,
talk about that whole area of training, excuse me. That's true for any organization that if you don't continue to train, whether it's volunteers or staff or, it has to be a continuous program of improvement. And that's what one thing I've noticed about SMART is that, the training is great, but you need to do more. You need to continue learning. You need to continue growing, and that's one of the challenges I think that's laid out in this strategic plan, as you were saying.
well, we're going to focus on that, I think, in a very strong way. I mean, I think there are changes we can make in our basic training program, but I think it's the ongoing, continuous training that's, I think, going to make a difference in sustaining SMART and in making sure that the volunteers who lead our meetings are know what are comfortable, they're up to date, they know what they're doing, and we can make sure that they're doing a good job
Yeah.
and help them in every way that we can.
Right, because then they feel more engaged, and no one likes to feel like they don't know what they're doing. So they're more likely to remain a facilitator, to perhaps attract other people and encourage them to become facilitators if they feel like they're supported and they know what they're doing, and it's something that they can feel good about.
Absolutely, and I think we also recognize that we can't be expecting facilitators to do meetings by themselves, or one facilitator to be taking on 2 and 3 meetings and expect them to endure for a long period of time. We need to get a lot more backup for facilitators and reorient our growth process so that we're encouraging people to develop teams of facilitators and more backup for facilitators so they're not burning out.
Right.
It was interesting when I joined the board back in 2017. I started looking at our growth rate, which at that time was incredible. But one thing that really stood out was that we were adding, approximately maybe 600 meetings a year. I mean, that's like incredible, 600
Mhm.
meetings a year. Yet we were discontinuing like 300 meetings a year.
Okay. Okay.
And that's alarming. And so we took a look at why are those meetings being discontinued? Now, half of them were meetings that were brand new, so the people just coming out of the training weren't given the support they need to succeed just coming out of the box. But half of the meetings also were ones that have been around for a while, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, where in those cases facilitators were burning out. Or they were moving on, and we didn't have mechanisms in place to back them up and to make sure that they had the support system to cover for themselves, so these
Sure.
meetings could be continued. So we need
Well,
a lot more volunteers. I
yeah.
think
Well, that's what goes exactly to what you were saying, that we have to take an honest look. What was going on? Why did so many meetings, go into suspended and not started up again? And that's part of that strategic planning process as well, is making sure you're being honest. I mean, there's an honesty, an organizational honesty to this kind of strategic planning. Would you say?
absolutely. No, I'm confident that we've really identified the most critical issues, that they're not going to be easy to resolve. But I think if we do make a very concerted effort, and I know we are going to do that, I think SMART's going to be a lot stronger and a lot larger and making a difference in ending this addiction epidemic that's really spiraling out of control.
Right.
And that's another thing. I even before the pandemic, we were looking at this addiction epidemic that was just incredibly huge. I mean, drug overdose is killing 70,000 people a year in the U.S. I mean, that number is just incredible. And 20 million people with substance use disorders, and only 1 in 10 getting any kind of treatment. Well, we thought the like the overdose number in particular was bad, say in 2019. When I started looking at the effect of that pandemic, that number has grown incredibly. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we
Yeah.
haven't even finished counting how many overdose deaths were in
Oh,
2020,
it's tragic. Just, yeah.
and we're we're up to like September now, and going back 12 months, and the number in September is like 88,000 people over that 12-month period. So I
Hmm.
mean, we may finish the year 2020 with looking at an increase that might be close to
Yeah.
100,000 deaths just due to drug
Yeah.
overdoses.
And
And
and and that's the importance. That's the importance of reaching people, Bill. As you started out by saying, it's about helping people who need smart recovery, who need the kinds of tools and practical experience that's offered at support meetings, all of those things. But none of this happens without being able to have resources. And we've talked about supporting volunteers. We talked about the kinds of things we look at in helping an organization and develop and become more effective in a today's world. But this requires resources. It requires money. What can you say about kind of? I know Smart's trying to develop a fun development culture. What can you say about that?
well, this is critical, and I think if anybody takes a look at our detailed strategic plan, which I think you'll have an opportunity to do in a couple of weeks, you'll see that it's extremely ambitious, and our ability to accomplish a lot of these goals are going to require significant amounts of money. And we have been more effective in getting grant money and money from foundations, and donations have been increasing, but we need a heck of a lot more. if we're going to build our staff to the point where we can support, say, an organization with 5,000 meetings in the U.S., a volunteer base of 5,000 to 7,000, which is like 4 to 5 times where we are right now. We're going to need a staff that's a lot larger than we have now, where you need a lot of professionals in specific areas, like training and education and fundraising. Communications and marketing is huge. I think people are often wonder, well, why haven't more people heard of SMART? I mean, well, because I'll tell you why. A lot of my background's in marketing and communications. We have not ever invested the funds required
Mm-hmm.
to make SMART, to make everybody aware of SMART, and that requires a substantial investment. I've been involved in a lot of outreach campaigns involving communications, and there's no way around it. You have to spend significant money to make your brand, your name well known to the people that need to know about it. I want SMART to be a household name.
Right.
Whenever the subject of addiction comes up, by whether public policy people are talking about it or whether doctors are talking about it, SMART should be part of that conversation. Whether, have you thought of going to SMART meetings? Have you looked at that program?
Do you know about SMART? Do you know what it can do? And well, that's, you use the word investment. It's about, the strategic plan is making an investment in the future of SMART and the future of all those families, friends, all those participants in their future, because as one of the 4-point program points out, a healthy and balanced life is the goal.
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the distinguishing and strongest features of SMART, is that we don't really, we're a transformative approach to addiction, where we help people transform their lives completely, and building a new life to replace the one that was disrupted or significantly upset by the addictive behavior, and that requires a lot of work and a very significant process of change.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And but that's what makes SMART very helpful, and the fact that we have this 4-point program that includes that 4th point, and help people look at something that's very positive they want to achieve. It's not just about quitting the addictive behavior. That's just the beginning.
Correct.
People, a lot of people don't really get this, who don't understand addiction themselves. But yes, you have to start by stopping the addictive behavior, but you don't recover until you've figured out a new lifestyle.
That's
new
right.
life.
That's right. And then you can enjoy and be fully engaged with your life in all regards. But you're listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. We're talking with Bill Greer. He's the board president of Smart Recovery USA. We're talking about the new strategic plan, which listeners can find a link on the homepage of smartrecovery.org to look at it, to read it, review it, get to know it a little bit, and see how you can plug in and help yourself and be a part of this movement, really the Smart Recovery movement. Bill, as we're starting to wrap up, I know we haven't talked specific goals or objectives about the plan, and that really wasn't the purpose of our conversation as much to let people know that the plan was out there and how important it was and what it meant to them. Can you say some more about what this strategic plan means to those listeners, to the SMART community?
Certainly. One of our most important initiatives is increasing the number of meetings and supporting our volunteers in every way possible to manage that increase, and to help our volunteers succeed in running their meetings more effectively, giving them the training and the other support that they need. We need to make changes to our organizational leadership and our structure so that we emphasize diversity a lot more. That's very critical, and we need to become a more diverse organization, which is obviously a trend that's happening throughout the United States. We need to be part of that movement. We need to invest a lot more money in SMART so that our volunteers can have the support that they need to be successful. And we need to do a lot more in promoting SMART to get people aware of the of SMART, so they will attend our meetings, so that they will volunteer to become facilitators or help our organization in other ways. So we can make professionals a lot more aware of SMART and see how SMART can fit into the recovery programs that they're helping their clients develop. Public policy, we need public officials more aware of SMART, so when they're creating policies to promote addiction, SMART is part of the policy making process.
Right. So they're doing something about it. I mean, I've heard you say, Bill, often it's one thing about awareness is that you have to make people aware so they act, so that there's some action taken. And
Absolutely.
that's what you're talking about when you talk about awareness with all those communities and all those groups. Just as we wrap up, Bill, anything else you want to say about the strategic plan, what people can,
Yes, a couple things. First of all, I want to emphasize that this is not a board plan. This is not a staff plan. This is a plan for the entire SMART community and anyone who wants to support the SMART community. And I think the more people that we can engage in helping us implement this plan, and implementation is what it's all about.
Right.
I mean, we can have a great plan, but if we don't execute it, well, then it's worthless. And so I think it's very important that we do everything we can to implement it. And I think we need help from everyone in our community who wants to make a difference in SMART's growth and success to be a part of it. We're forming a lot of committees. You can join those committees. You can just make suggestions on how you think SMART needs to change to the staff, to myself, to your regional coordinators if you're already a volunteer. Just get engaged. We're taking a look at all the ways we need to change SMART right now, and we're doing it at a time when our program is needed more than ever because of the addiction epidemic and the fact that it's a lot worse now due to the pandemic. If SMART can really shine right now in delivering our program and helping a lot more people recover, people are going to notice. And I think we're going to make an impact that I think really reverberates throughout America. And I think that's one way that we'll get SMART into the public limelight where we need to be, and that can help us achieve our goals and help as many people as possible recover.
That's Bill Greer. He is Smart Recovery USA's board president. We've been talking about the strategic plan. Once again, you can find Smart's 2021-2022 strategic plan, and it's linked off of our homepage at smartrecovery.org. Bill, thank you so much for getting us excited about this plan and telling us a little bit about it. And I hope the audience really takes advantage of what's in it and gets connected and gets engaged. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Luke. I appreciate the opportunity, and we'll be talking about this in the future, I can assure you.
Sounds good. That sounds good. You've been listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. This is your host, Luke Frazier. Until the next time, stay healthy and stay connected.